Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hey, hello you guys. How you doing? Welcome to a Thursday in May here on Lynn Cullen Live, for that matter. I'm sure it's a Thursday in May wherever you are too, but that might not be true since you might be listening tomorrow when it would be a Friday in May. And oh, Cullen, shut up. Okay, as you can possibly see if you're streaming this with video, I got another warm body next to me, which is always a pleasure. And this is Erin Ninehouser, a local activist. This is a woman who's out there on the front lines as opposed to where I always am with the hand-wringing and hair-pulling crowd. Oh, if words could get things done, there'd be statues erected to me, no doubt. But you're the one who gets down, knocks on doors, talks to people. You were front and center in the effort for health insurance coverage. Boy, we could talk about that, too.
Been busy.
Yeah, let's not. But Erin and her husband, another well-known local activist, have a new mission. Thank you. I knew there was a word, and it's a mission, and that is to. Well, I'll let you say it. The mission is to what?
Is to deprogram America from the toxic effects of polarizing inflammatory media, and so. The Hear Yourself Think project, hearyourselfthink.org, really came out of our grassroots experience. Over the last 10 years, Dave has knocked on over 100,000 doors, mostly in southwestern PA. So I haven't knocked on as many, but I spent the last 5 years, as you said, working on implementation of the healthcare law. So we really saw the Fox effect, the misinformation, the fear, the cynicism that right-wing media especially creates in the culture. We saw that up close and personal for a long time, not just in our organizing, but also with people in our family. So that's where the
Your family too?
Yes, I think probably everybody.
Wow, yeah. I was just at a family event in California, and where people clearly knowing where everybody was standing, you didn't go there. We didn't talk because there would have been trouble. Now, some families do talk, and they end up being estranged.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, there's real trouble.
There's real trouble, and did people sit at different tables, or did they just
No.
talk?
We're a close family. We care about each other, so we just avoided the subject of the election.
Right.
I mean, because it would have gone nowhere. I never thought for a minute that I could change anyone's mind. You, however, are saying, yes, it can be done.
It can be done.
Not easy, though.
It's not easy, but what's harder and more destructive is just moving into separate universes. Where
we're already there, right?
Yeah, we're already there, and it's bad.
It is mind-blowing how we've seen this play out. I used to say started saying 15, 20 years ago doing talk radio that I felt like Alice who'd fallen down a rabbit hole and found myself in a strange, different reality. And I was then talking about the other universe that I saw so many Americans living in. And it wasn't as bad then. I mean, I think facts had some standing. And now facts don't matter. Everyone's got their own.
Everyone's got their own.
And if you come up with, that is absolutely not true. Here, look at this. And they simply will not accept whatever your resource is, even if it's a primary resource, even if it's a quote from the very person's mouth, whatever. And it's frightening, really, because there seems to be something irrational going on, and that's what's so scary. Now,
it is, yeah. It is, and the resistance to fact is important because there's, there's this sort of, in this media culture, people, there's a real breakdown between what, opinion and news and also fact. And so you have people say, well, I believe it, so therefore it's true. And so we really wanted to, we've had so many conversations like that we really wanted to figure out how that happens, how that happens in the culture, how it happens at the individual level. So, we did obviously had a lot of grassroots experience, but we also started reading a lot about how this stuff works in the brain, how might see the shirt, the Brainwashing of My Dad.
Okay.
But
And
we're gonna talk about that. But it's interesting how especially fear works in the brain to override reason and critical thinking. And so when people's buttons are pushed constantly, especially like they are in right-wing radio, when the
think of
underlying
right-wing
messages,
radio, and I mean, anybody who has listened to it for any length of time, I mean, you usually can't handle too much, but it doesn't matter. For the last 3 decades, there has been across this country, and sometimes the only thing available on the radio, obviously, it's been the AM dial especially, is this right-wing sound machine that deals in sometimes fact, I suppose. Every once in a while they hit on a fact. But mostly it's in fulminating rage and fear. Rage and fear. And those are 2 big motivators, obviously, because those are the things that set off fight, flight, adrenaline, testosterone. None of the things that have an impact on our ability to think.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. And if
so are you saying really America, a sizable percentage you think of America has been essentially brainwashed?
I think it's going that way.
Well,
and what we're saying, and it's so interesting what we're saying, and why I think what we're doing is so important, is that it's really not about intelligence. It's about susceptibility to manipulation, and we are all vulnerable to it. That's why the advertising industry exists and is a billion-dollar industry. So, recognizing our own susceptibility to having our buttons pushed, how it influences us, how when we're afraid, we're not thinking rationally, and in some cases you can't. There's a scientist and science journalist, psychologist, Daniel Goleman, who coined the term amygdala hijack. And the amygdala
hijack.
Amygdala hijack.
Amygdala.
So if folks want to remember the word amygdala, it's Roger Ailes' Lady Love, Amy G. Dalla, because the man is in love with fear, right? Fox News is all about fear and their stories and their coverage. But the amygdala is the brain's fear center, the lizard brain. And Daniel Goleman talks about amygdala hijack, which is when there's just a rush of negative emotion, fear and anger, that can actually impair your ability to think critically. Right. So it's like your lizard brain is in the driver's seat, and if you think about what's happening at some of the Trump rallies, not everyone who goes to a Trump rally is a bigot or a hateful person or a person that's unreachable. But once they get inside in that environment and those buttons are being pushed, they're
surrounded by people who are all.
By it, exactly.
I mean, wow, that would be a force that would be hard to resist.
Exactly, and we actually went in Pittsburgh when Sean Hannity came to town for a town hall, which was more like a rally.
You went to Soldiers and Sailors.
We went there, we got inside, and it was really interesting because waiting in line outside, people for the most, there was a few people there with like neck tattoos who looked like very serious. But for the most part, people just looked like normal, regular people. It was a pretty diverse crowd. It was pretty young, probably because it was in a college area. But once, people got inside, Sean Hannity did like this warm-up act where he said, one part of it was, he was like, which candidate am I? And then he barked like a dog and the crowd shouted Hilary, so he did this like red meat stand-up pro wrestling MC act to warm up the crowd for a town hall hosted by a news organization, right? But it was really interesting to see those dynamics because outside, there was people, for the most part, they were in control of themselves and, you could talk to them and, they were friendly, and then you get inside that environment and it all changed. So
they turned into a rabid mob. As I was reading some of your material, I had a memory, and I easily 3 decades ago gave a speech, I still remember, it was down at the Hilton, where I argued that probably the most important class that all grade schools should have is a class in media literacy.
Thank you. Yes.
And people were looking at me like, what?
Yes.
I was arguing that it is in this day and age, and little did I know about internet and all the social media, it didn't even exist. It is so important that starting young, you teach kids to be very, very skeptical and knowledgeable about how those people out there that are coming at you with a message are attempting to manipulate you. It is so important. Of course, there's no such thing as media literacy courses, as far as I know. I really think you would not have a nation of sheep, as we seem to now, if Americans had learned at an early age not to fall for it. But in a capitalist, market-based economy, media literacy is not going to be taught because it would undermine the power.
So much of how everything
so much of how everything works.
But
even smart people are not aware. They're not protected then.
Absolutely, and that's there was a really interesting book about advertising, and the author was talking about how, like, the PBR campaign, Pabst Blue Ribbon, that it had this big appeal, and they had like an anti-marketing campaign that part of the appeal and why people gravitated to it was the perception that Pabst wasn't trying to market to them, but that was actually their marketing strategy, was to seem like they were above it and too cool, and they didn't really care about selling, and that's why people bought it. So the author talks about how recognition is not immunity. You know, just that you can recognize something doesn't make you immune from it. So, but I so wholeheartedly agree about media literacy because you, like you said, you're being bombarded constantly with all these messages from a very young age. And, you know, especially, you know, and then you think about TV news, you know, something that's calling itself news, but really, you know, is
it's not anymore. No, it's classic. It's People magazine now. It's total entertainment. It's totally infotainment.
And we've been going back in the archives and listening to, you know, Walter Cronkite talk about, you know, his fears about where the news business was headed. Like, at the, you know, toward the end of his career, that this pressure to get profit from the news department would make it become more like entertainment, and it has.
Absolutely.
And, you know, across the board, all cable news, but, you know, Fox News really is pushing the envelope on those trends, you know, for a political purpose.
Well, I would argue that in the effort to, you know, counter that, I don't find MSNBC a whole heck of a lot different in that regard. I think they're both propaganda machines.
Yeah, I mean,
one's on our side,
right.
That on their side. I find both. I don't really want to listen to both because it offends my sense of being an independent, thoughtful human being.
Yeah, and I will agree with you that that MSNBC is trying
to be Fox.
Trying, but not nearly as close in terms of just the rabid nature of their propaganda. But we cut the cable cord a couple years ago, and, you know, for a couple days it was almost like coming down, you know, if you were like an addict. You know, we were like sitting there, we just wanted to flip the channels. But after that, it was great. You know, so we just read news online. We'll watch PBS NewsHour, you know, on the internet the day after. So that's what we tell people to do is, you know, it's all right, you know, think about the news value you're getting when you go to a source. You know, ask those questions, who, what, where, when, why. What do I actually know on a deeper level when I'm coming away from this news source, and let that influence your choices.
So this term you used earlier on, the Fox effect, is a term that's out there. I mean, and obviously refers to what Roger Ailes, who I think will go down in American history as one of the most destructive forces that this country unleashed, one of the most destructive forces to our republic ever. Roger Ailes and Fox News, the Fox effect. And perhaps you've heard about this documentary. I've always wanted to see this. And you guys are bringing a documentary about the Fox effect, The Brainwashing of My Dad.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that, Doc, and when people can see it.
Well, it's a wonderful film. We invite people to come and see it Friday, June 3rd at 7:30 at the Union Project in Highland Park. So it's on Nagley Avenue. You keep going. It's right at the corner of Nagley and Stanton.
Nagley and Stanton. Yes.
Friday, June
Highland
3rd,
Park.
7:30. But The Brainwashing of My Dad is a really important film. You should definitely see it. The filmmaker wanted to understand what happened to her father.
Who was what? A liberal Democrat?
No. He was, a kind, gentle, apolitical, Kennedy Democrat, but never very polarized, never very
Not
partisan.
political.
Not political.
Yeah.
Just easygoing, good-natured
Sweet
guy. Sweet guy. Very sweet. And all of that began to change when the family had to move, and he got a new job. And he suddenly had a long commute to work, and he started listening to political talk radio. And back in the day, he started listening to Bob Grant and then Rush Limbaugh, and then he met a friend who turned him on to Fox News, and then it just became this, hours and hours of the day.
He was being programmed.
And his personality completely changed. He became hostile and divisive and bigoted, hateful, just would sort of flip out at over any little thing. Any little thing would set him off, and really became a divisive figure in the family. And so Jen,
were they sure, his wife and his children, they were sure that this is what did it, as opposed to maybe he had some kind of
that was the only
mental issue
that was the
going on?
only thing that changed was his media habits. And Jen talks about his Limbaugh lunches where he would sit in the kitchen for 3 hours, having a beer and belching and listening to Rush Limbaugh. And it got so bad that his wife actually put soundproof doors up to block him out of, so that she could have some peace during the day. And so Jen wanted to figure out, well, how did this happen? How did
this sweet man turn into this
how did
hostile?
This transformation happen, and can it be reversed? And is the term brainwashing, is that too strong, or is that actually what's happening?
No, I think that is what it is.
I think sometimes when people hear brainwashing or you're brainwashed, it sounds like an insult.
Well,
but
brainwashing
it's a
would
specific
be
process.
Repetition,
Mm-hmm.
repetition. All you're hearing is the same kind of repetition.
Yeah,
that's called brainwashing.
And that's exactly what they talk about in the film. She interviews a neuroscientist who talks about how, there's brainwashing by force, where you're sort of locked in a room and, indoctrinated, physically with the threat of physical force. Then there's brainwashing by stealth, which she talks about is happening in the right-wing media, where when you close off, the information, when only certain kind of information is coming into the brain, anything that contradicts that is going to get kicked out. It's just not going to be processed.
Right.
So that's, we talk about facts bouncing off the bubble. That's how something like that happens.
Okay, but I absolutely agree with you. But I will maintain that if the Fox folks, are living in a bubble, to a certain extent, our side now is got its own bubble, and all anybody's doing is listening to their own echo chamber.
Yeah.
And we have the same effect when we hear somebody nobody knows how to talk to each other anymore.
You're absolutely right, and there definitely is a bubble on the left. And so there's this there's enforced separation through things like gerrymandering, but there's also just self-imposed segregation,
right.
Even within families.
Absolutely.
Like I think about my grandfather's funeral, and the liberals and the conservatives among my aunts and uncles sat at different tables. Nobody said anything about it, but that's just
you
sort
gravitate
of how
to your
gravitate
own.
to your own. But that's really dangerous, right? That's no way to run a country when people can't talk to each other, when we're existing in these alternate, separate universes. So there has to be a way.
Okay, so
to
that
come
brings
together.
us to where I said I called myself a hand wringer and a hair puller, but you and your husband and others of your kind, your wonderful kind, are people who act. So you've come up with this program, the Hear Yourself Think project. Tell us about that, and I know you have a first big event coming up at the Squirrel Hill Library.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
So hearyourselfthink.org is the website, and we want people to be able to hear themselves think, and that's really hard in today's media landscape. Like, you're bombarded with messages constantly, so we encourage things like reading. We do book drives, because when you read, right, you hear yourself think, you process information differently. But in terms of how do you break through with folks who are so sucked into these alternate universes? How do you bend the curve back toward rationality, critical thinking coming together?
I'll tell you one thing you don't do. You don't do what I do, and you don't do what most of my callers do, which is make fun of them, scream at them, and call them morons. I don't think that's going to get them to open their heads up to whatever it is we're saying.
No, I mean, because think about how you feel when that's done to you. When you're at a rally, and it's it's hard, and but it's also understandable because so much of the rhetoric on the right wing side is so vicious and ugly that it creates this need to sort of band together and want to defend ourselves, right?
Exactly.
So it's totally understandable.
Well, it's maddening.
Yeah,
and you almost go nuts.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's hard.
But it becomes. We're not part. All we do then is exacerbate the division, and so. So how do you talk to somebody who's totally on the other side? We all know them. Some of us love some of them. How is it you got some tips?
Yes, we do. So we have a whole training, and we want to invite folks to come to the Squirrel Hill Library the day after the film screening. So it's Saturday, June 4th from 3 to 5 at the Squirrel Hill Library. Our main strategy, if you had to boil it down to one thing, we talk about inflicting self-reflection, and all the fear-based messages in the culture create this tribal dynamic where you want to get with your team and sort of throw bombs at the other side, even
Absolutely.
if it's even on a rhetorical level,
right?
Because of the power of fear.
That's what this show's all about.
Right. So when we talk about inflicting self-reflection, that's really like holding up a mirror so someone can have that stop and think moment. Think about how they're reacting, how they're overreacting. If they really have an understanding beyond the talking points, because no one wants to feel like a sucker, right? So if someone can have that realization that, their media source, Fox News or Rush Limbaugh is pushing their buttons and hasn't given them the full picture, and then they go charging out into the world to make a big stink about something, and then they're embarrassed because they don't have the full picture. But
this is so funny, Erin. I was just driving through Frick Park about a half hour ago, and I was thinking of the Robert Burns poem that, that we had the gift to see ourselves as others see us. Yes. That's the kind of self. And he was lamenting. He was lamenting that it was obviously very difficult for human beings to be self-reflective.
Yes.
So
it is, and it takes. That's why, it takes practice having these kind of conversations, because if you just walk up to someone who, is at a Trump rally and you say you've been brainwashed by Fox News, they're just going to want to fight with you. Right. But if you can walk up and have a conversation about how news in this country has changed, how weren't things better in the days of Walter Cronkite when you could really trust the news to tell you what was happening and not try to tell you how to feel about it? People that are avid Fox News watchers, and we did this at the Trump rally, have very positive feelings about that time. Nostalgia is also a powerful thing.
Well, you mean the 50s or 60s, but I would think if you say CBS News, that'll immediately be a red flag, because now when you say CBS News to them, they think mainstream media,
right? The liberal media.
So you gotta.
But you really have to. But even young people remember that as like a sort of a golden age or something to strive for, something that's been lost. We talked to some ladies after the Trump rally, and one of them, so they were just at this Hannity event. They were just whipped up into a frenzy. They came out, we talked to them, and, she talked about how she used to sit with her parents and watch Walter Cronkite every night, and that was a big deal for the family. And so we were able to have a conversation about how news now does try to create controversy and whip up fear for ratings. And they agreed with us about that. And so they can go home and think now, the next time they watch Fox News, about how Fox is doing that. So we train people to have those conversations where you're creating those stop and think moments, and you're creating the opportunity for people to draw the conclusions themselves, rather than just saying, here is what I think is happening, accept that, because people are going to want to fight you. But if they can arrive at it themselves,
exactly,
that's very, very powerful.
So my dear departed father was somebody who always felt that the only way anything ever happens is when if there's two people sitting across from each other, the only thing anything constructive, positive, forward-moving ever happens is when you find common ground. And we now have a media that is intent on making that very difficult, very difficult. And we're all, I think we've all been brainwashed with this screaming and this black and white and no nuance and no ability.
Exactly.
And we're all suffering as a result.
We are suffering, and people need those connections. And one of the worst things about what right-wing media does is that it drives away the real human family connections that people have, and it drives people away, and then the only person, the emotional bond with the family is broken and then created with that talk show host, with that, Rush Limbaugh or Sean Hannity or Bill O'Reilly. And so, and often, Fox News' audience is older, but, there are younger people that watch Fox too, but especially, when people are in their older years, you want to have your family with you. You don't want those relationships to be strained at that point.
I'll tell you what else is in your older years, you feel more vulnerable. And you're much more, in fact, vulnerable to brainwashing and to being made fearful. Because when you're older, you have reason to feel a little more anxious, like you're not quite as capable of taking care of yourself, or this could happen or that could happen.
They prey on those fears.
Right. And so the Brainwashing of My Dad, this film, which has won awards, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's won. I remember reading about it. Is the father part of it? I mean, did he agree so he is interviewed as well? But does he come around at the end?
Well, I don't.
You can't tell.
I don't want to be.
All right, no,
okay,
no, spoiler alert, yeah, never mind.
But it's a very so the father knew that the film was being made. It's a really emotionally powerful documentary, but it also does a great job of uncovering the history of right-wing media's rise. So
does it start with the think tanks being established?
The think tanks goes all the way back to the defeat of Barry Goldwater the rights response.
That's right.
One thing, I just probably all of your listeners know this fun fact, but Roger Ailes got his start on the Mike Douglas show. He has no background in journalism. And when we tell people that, when we tell Fox Newsers that, or in the training, most people can't identify Roger Ailes by looking at a picture. That's understandable. But people definitely are blown away to hear that here's this person running a news network
who has no experience in news,
but has decades of experience as a political operative
and entertainment and political. And so in Ronald Reagan's kitchen cabinet, Ailes is the guy who just brilliantly figured out how to sell Ronald Reagan, how to market him. He's a master of marketing and getting his message out, God knows. And as I said, I think, man, the only reason I really hope I'm wrong about God, because I want this guy to burn in hell. I do.
Yeah. I mean,
I think he's evil.
Well, what he's knowingly doing to people, like you said, knowingly preying on and exploiting those fears.
Can you imagine what a cynical bastard he is?
And like you said, the answer is not to
call people cynical bastards.
No, not to. I was gonna say not to try to do. We don't need a Fox News of the left, is what I'm saying.
No,
we need people to be able to constructively solve problems, to be operating from the same set of facts. There are Republicans that have good ideas too. And we shouldn't always be at war. And we can't.
Nothing will be
in our
accomplished.
Families, nothing will be accomplished. Scorched earth. The scorched earth rhetoric is now manifesting itself in scorched earth relationships within families, and in politics we can't govern, and so this can't go on. And this is our way of trying to bend the curve back toward a place where we can get along in a meaningful way. This isn't about having civil, polite conversations. It's about having effective conversations about manipulation, how we can all recognize it when it's happening to us. We all have an ideological predisposition. We all have our own biases. We need to actively work to restrain those,
Wow.
So that we can get along, work together, move forward as a country,
Geez, I love you. I love you and your husband for your hopefulness. The fact that you're always willing to try when, as I said, the hand wringers and, hair pullers and we just despair. So you're
It's
saying
a powerful thing. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
but you
you
got to
have
try to move it
you have
forward.
to have hope. You have to have hope. I mean, hey, we get a lot of our inspiration from Bruce Springsteen. So he talks. If you ever listen to the song "Long Walk Home," it's gonna be a long walk home, but you got to start. You got to start.
Absolutely.
What's the alternative?
So, Erin, let's review. First of all, if people go to hearyourselfthink.org or project.org?
No, hearyourselfthink.org.
Hearyourselfthink.org.
Fancy bumper sticker here. So hearyourselfthink.org. Please get in touch with us. One of the things that we do that we think makes us unique is that we'll help you with your individual situation. So we have a way on our website for you to tell us your story of what's happening. If you have a relative that you've had a falling out with or a situation that you're having trouble dealing with, we will help you work through that. We're actually talking to someone tomorrow whose relationship with her father is strained just over all of this right-wing media stuff. So if you have a situation like that, please get in touch with us. If you want to bring our deprogrammer training to your group or organization, if you want to set up a screening or a house party of the film, hearyourselfthink.org is the way to get in touch with us.
How wonderful. And that film, we got to go see that. Friday night, June 3rd. So that's a week from this Friday?
Yes.
Yes, a week from tomorrow. And it's at 801 North Negley. It's a old, wonderful church across from the Stanton Avenue Pharmacy or something. So it's Stanton and Highland, and it's at 7:30, June 3rd. Is it free?
It is free. Suggest a donation to help offset the cost of renting the space. So.
Okay. So that's cool. And then the next afternoon, Erin, her husband, Dave, are going to be doing this sort of presentation and training from 3 to 5 at the Squirrel Hill Library, June 4th. So I so appreciate you doing this.
Well, I appreciate you having us on
and making the effort. And it's something, you're right, that we're all living in it. We all recognize what you're saying. We all know it. But the problem is human nature and human biology.
Yes. Yeah. But the good news is the amygdala isn't the only part of our brain, right? We have a higher brain, you know.
Yes. There's the medulla oblongata I remember from biology class. There's the cerebellum.
Right. So we have, in the training, we talk about it as the bunker brain versus the founder brain, you know, to layman's terms understanding. But, you know, we have that. All of that's in us too. You know, the ability to think critically, to reason together, to overcome that instinct to just fight, you know, that's in there too.
You know what we need to do? We're always invoking on both sides the founding fathers. Those guys didn't agree with each other. Those guys were coming from totally different places. How about if we try to honor, on this Memorial Day weekend, try to honor those people whose courage created this grand experiment of a country, which was founded on the proposition that we have brains and are capable of self-government. And they came together and hammered out compromise. I'm sure there was lots of screaming and fighting and this and that. But maybe we need to ourselves break away from this quagmire we're all in, because it's getting us nowhere. And in fact, if it's getting us anywhere, it's in a place that is dangerously close to oblivion. There's no positive to the way we're currently communicating with each other. None. God bless you.
Thank you.
Even I don't believe in a God, but I mean it. I hope the same God that's going to toast Roger Ailes till the end of all time will take you in 100 years or more to his bosom and give you everything you've ever wanted.
Well, we just want we want people to we want people to get away from this inflammatory media. I mean, we have to.
But not me.
Yeah.
But not me.
You're not part of the problem.
Well, yeah, a little bit. I think we all need to feel that we have some growing to do
in
this regard.
Yeah.
Right. Well, really, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I do mean it. Do we have a quick little spot we can put on? I'm going to be back in just a second because there's like news afoot that we have to scream, rant, and hand-wring about, okay? So stay tuned.
Need to get some rest. This is the worst headache ever.
Right arm's all tingly all of a sudden. Must have slept on her last night.
I keep losing my balance. These old bones need some exercise.
Granddaddy, what you just said doesn't even make sense. It sounds like gibberish.
Signs like these could be more than what they seem. They could be a sign of stroke.
Sudden weakness or numbness of the face, arm, or leg.
Sudden trouble with vision in one or both eyes.
Sudden trouble walking or difficulty with balance.
Or a sudden intense headache that comes out of nowhere.
If you or someone you know has any of these symptoms, don't wait. Call 911 immediately. You could make a difference in someone's life, someone you love, maybe even your own.
Time lost is brain lost.
Find out more at powertoendstroke.org. Brought to you by the American Heart Association, American Stroke Association, and the Ad Council.
Check out the CPED classifieds for the top places to work in the Burgh. Aerotech, located in RIDC Park in O'Hara Township, is looking for CNC machinists and skilled assemblers. They are offering excellent pay and benefits packages, including profit-sharing opportunities and a retirement program. Go to aerotech.com for more information or call 412-967-6800. A dynamic opportunity in advanced automation and robotics is waiting for you at aerotech.com.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
Yeah, hi, hello. Welcome back to the show. A friend of mine was saying, you never give the phone number. I wanted to call and I couldn't figure out, and I guess okay. I've got to learn to say it every once in a while. So, give me a call at 412-316-3381. That's why I never give it. I don't know it. I have to... okay, never. Okay, so I've got a few little items here I just need to talk out. And one is, I mentioned Ken Starr yesterday, former special prosecutor, whose work, brought Monica Lewinsky's semen-strained blue dress into public discourse, and who now is wandering around apparently decrying all of that, calling it what was the euphemism he came up with? Something about the something misfortune. What was it? It's unbelievable. And he's, he has become the president of Baylor University. And while he decries and regrets and all of this, he has never apologized for pulling the nation down and for taking a president away from his duties to defend himself from impeachment, despite the fact that the American people had clearly stated, while they didn't approve of his behavior, they wanted him in the White House. Okay, but Ken Starr and the Republicans never met an election they didn't want to rig. And so if you lose it, you can still try to win it by taking out the guy that's there. Well, I got a little update on Ken Starr that's interesting. Ironic, I believe, is another word for it. It seems to appear that he is, in all likelihood, about to become the former president of Baylor University as early as next week, as a result of a number of scandals breaking left and right about his administration's, get this, cover-up of sexual assaults by members of the football team. How's that for Ken Starr, who I remember when he was going about his business was always described as an extremely honorable man, upright, blah, 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 and how this was all very distasteful and very difficult for him. And then he goes out and covers up sexual assaults. In fact, one of these players is now serving a 20-year sentence for rape. Monica Lewinsky, at least, was, even if she was in a less powerful position, she was perfectly consensual, I can assure you. The thought of taking, wow, sure, oh yeah, what? That charismatic, good-looking Bill Clinton wants to have me? You betcha! I understand that, totally. Yeah. I mean, power's a great aphrodisiac. So, isn't that interesting, though? And I wanted to share it. I gotta look up more information on it, but anyway, to the emails, Beth writes, in hearing your guest, it made me think of this movie I was working on. We were shooting a prison scene. We had about 500 male extras, and we were shooting in an old prison. Some played prison guards, others played Latino gang prisoners, neo-Nazi prisoners, black gang prisoners, and other groups you can imagine in a prison. And then after hair, makeup, wardrobe, these guys all looked their parts. Day one, when we broke for lunch, everyone mingled. Extra prison guards sat with their fellow extra Latino gang members. By day 5, though, at lunch, all groups stayed together. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? The extra, meaning the guys who were playing guards, only ate with the other guys who were playing guards. The neo-Nazi guys only sat with the neo-Nazis, and on and on. They began self-segregating based on the characters they were playing. It was something that the rest of the crew noticed. And boy, I wish this dynamic had been filmed. Would have been more interesting than the movie itself. Wow, that's fascinating. It really is. Ansel writes, the Republicans learned long ago that the power of suggestion is a superpower, and they have exploited that power for decades. In Trump's own book, The Power of the Deal, he says, quote, if you repeat a lie 3 times, people will believe it. He says that in his book. Wasn't that said before by Herman Goering? I'm serious. Or is here Goering, Hitler's guy? Didn't he? See if you get anything. If you repeat a lie 3 times, people will believe it. Or is Goering the one who just said, if you're going to lie, lie big, because then... But, I mean, it's all from the same playbook. What? Celine? Maybe. Hang on. Okay. Ansel continues, it's amazing and sad that this new organization that Erin and her husband have formed is offering deprogramming assistance. Trump supporters are programmed, and they don't even know it. I don't know how you fight that battle, but it's nice to know that someone like her is making the effort. I agree. I mean, this is an effort we can all make on an individual level, obviously, but it takes being what she brought up, self-reflective, and it makes us eschew the self-indulgence of giving way to to what I actually do daily. There's a self-indulgent aspect to just saying whatever I want and, damn the torpedoes. I'm not trying to talk any Fox fan into my point, but it would be more productive if we could return to a kind of language that allowed for back and forth. Anyway, I think, my tenure in talk radio, I saw it change. When I started in talk radio, there was not this sense, I never had the sense, that I was supposed to have a certain political perspective to counter the right wing. I started out just talking about news, talking about things I noticed, like I still do pretty much. But my show was politicized over the years as that right-wing talk machine rose and rose. And so even talk stations, the station I was on was the only one in the city that was offering different points of view, because that was not the model anymore. The model was all right-wing all the time. And eventually, I was out of radio. Okay, so Celine, did you find anything about Okay, so Trump's quote is, if you repeat a lie 3 times, people will believe it.
And this is attributed several different ways.
Okay.
So I wouldn't necessarily take this as total fact, but he's definitely said this in a roundabout way. If you tell a lie big enough and keep
Wait, who are you quoting here?
Goebbels.
Goebbels. Okay, she's quoting Hitler's propaganda minister. Okay.
And this is from the Jewish Virtual Library,
okay,
a project of the American-Israeli Cooperative Enterprise.
Okay. All right.
If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it.
There it is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, the only thing that Goebbels put in was big. But so Trump is now, I guess, in his. Isn't that something? Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, as I've been saying, you are looking at the beginnings of a unique and peculiarly American fascism. And anyone who says I'm going too far with that, well, I am sorry. I feel absolutely certain that that's true. If you feel more comfortable substituting fascism for nativistic populism, okay, then maybe we'll all agree on that. But nativism populism goes, nativistic populism, and fascism are sort of hard to pry apart. They're all part of the same destructive animal. Quote from Mencken. God, if he were alive today, I cannot even imagine. I can't imagine the vitriol that he would be penning. But here's what he wrote, and I don't know, this is probably written in the 30s. It was sure before feminism, because he says the men of America, because that's all that counted. The men the American people admire most extravagantly are the most daring liars. The men they detest the most violently are those who try to tell them the truth. On some great and glorious day, the plain folks of this land will get their heart's desire. And what rough beast its hour come round at last slouches toward Bethlehem to be born? Donald Trump. Garrison Keeler writes, I mean, if you walked aboard a cruise ship, you're going on a cruise, you come on the cruise ship, and then you see the captain. He's this peroxided guy strutting around the deck and hollering about what a great navigator he is and how all his passengers love him. And you would probably pick up your bags and head for the gangway. You would say, I'm not getting on this guy's a nut. Yeah, righto. Okay, here's some. Lynn, you'll remember the Stanford prison study from the 70s. Yes. Phil Zimbardo has responded to the Abu Ghraib issues by recalling his study and the roles that the guards and prisoners assume just by being in the prison environment. This is these studies about how we will take on. That study, if I recalled, was a bunch of graduate students, and they were put in a group of either prisoners or guards, and it didn't take long at all. They were all, knew each other. Didn't take long at all before it took what? 3 days is all it took for the guards to start abusing the prisoners. So just the power of being made up, back to Beth's email, the power of being made up to be in this certain group, and they begin self-segregating even though they're just play acting. But that's right. And then Craig goes on to say, and other psychological research shows that people who are incompetent in a certain area do not realize that they are incompetent, and they tend to overestimate their competence. Basically, they don't know that they don't know. And in order to progress, tend to think that they are experts. Well, yeah, none of us don't know what we don't know, but some of us are humble enough to know we don't know. I have said on this show before, and I say this about people on my side of the divide, when somebody is totally certain, that's a sign you want to sort of back away and take, don't get rid of your own capacity for thought. Because the person who's got the truth, the person who is, they got it, I figured it out, this is what's happening, this is it. Things are always more complicated. Always. And I mean, I do this kind of thing too. So boy, we humans are a piece of work. Son of a bitch. And speaking of the ability to self-reflect, I don't know if Hilary Clinton has it. What do you think? I think this report that's come out, which is like, it's like, 36 long-stemmed red roses handed right over to the Republicans. This is the State Department investigation report of her email, private email use. And it exonerates her from having done anything illegal. But that's about all it does. If you read the report, you see that, in fact, she has not been particularly forthright, which is to say, honest. And for a woman who knows that this is one of the big negatives that Americans feel about her, even people who are going to vote for her, that she has a little problem with honesty. It's a Clinton family problem in general. So after months of telling us that she used this private email for convenience and that she was cooperating in every way with the State Department's investigation, the fact of the matter is the report that came out refutes that. In fact, she did not cooperate. She declined to be interviewed. Now, this is separate from what the FBI is looking into. Jesus. And she spent, all last summer, she was insisting that she did not need to apologize for keeping this private server. And then she ended up having to, walk that back. In September, she clumsily acknowledges that, I probably shouldn't have. It was really kind of an apology. But she forever puts herself in a position of then being uncovered, found out, having told a falsehood or not quite right. She mischaracterized this and that. I was mentioning yesterday or the day before, she had a 69% approval rating when she departed the State Department. Americans overwhelmingly looked at her in a positive light, thought she was one heck of an impressive person. She's now down to what? 53. Now 53% have an unfavorable opinion of her. Now, a lot of that is the steady drumbeat of the lies being told about her and the constant crooked Hilary, crooked Hilary, crooked Hilary. That has the same impact that low energy Jeb had, that little Mario had. And this crap works, but she keeps giving the other side. Why won't she just be forthright? And then she's at an event last night after this thing broke, and she refused. Reporters are screaming questions at her about it, and she walks by, can't hear a thing, she worries me. She worries me. Chuck writes, never before this election season have I ever felt a division between friends and family like I have this one. I cannot speak the words Trump nor Clinton outside my own home for fear I will engage someone in an unwanted conversation or make an enemy of a longtime friend. To keep the peace on our street, I bite my tongue. Well, boy, Chuck, you are not alone. It shouldn't be like this. All of America needs to be deprogrammed. I think Erin has a long uphill battle. Yeah. I'm wondering, though, we say we've never seen this before, but we tend to forget and we tend to look back on, the past gets better as we leave it behind, and the future always looks frightening. But I seem to recall in the 60s when, the Vietnam War was happening and the 68 convention and all of the upheaval of the war and the assassinations of the Kennedys and Dr. King and others and Nixon and the Southern Strike. I think people wow, there was a lot of families. I remember a dinner at a house of a cousin's when I was about 19 or 20, and I remember screaming. I mean, we were screaming at each other about the Vietnam War. And I just felt like I hated them. You idiots. So maybe we forget that time, too, was pretty intense and caused a lot of familial strife. But yeah, this is different because of the forces working on us. And maybe the smartest thing we could all do is do what Erin and her husband did, and that's unplug. I swear it'd be good for our health. Anyway, I hope you take advantage of this movie on June 3rd because I bet it'll be very, very interesting. Ever since I heard about it, I've wanted to see it. Okay, you guys, thank you. I am a nervous wreck because of the game tonight. If I come in here tomorrow looking absolutely bedraggled, exhausted, and miserable, that will be a bad sign, I suppose. But, I mean, it's possible. This is going to be, help! Please, please, if there is a God up there. Oh, no, you can't ask God to deal with sports. I'm sorry. Okay. Well, anyway, so do what you can. Wear your lucky socks. Put your underwear on backwards. Whatever the hell you have to do. Stay out of the room. I don't know. But go Pens. It'd be so much fun to be in the Stanley Cup Finals again. Can't take the sports fan out of me. Have a great day.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.